Right then, welcome back to. Oh, hang on, let me pull the mic over. That might help a bit as well. Try again. Welcome back to Hedge and History. So last time we had a look at someone in history who I sort of. Well, last time we had a look anyway. I sort of promised you we were next going to be crossing the Irish Sea, and we're going to talk about a blue bottle and a witchcraft trial in 1865. And I am a man of my word. So today, am I still streaming? Yes, I think I am. Sorry, there's a bit of an interruption on, look like on the YouTube side. That was a bit strange, but I think I'm still here. All right. So where was I? So today we're going to talk about Biddy Early, which was County Clare's most wise woman, and honestly one of the most purely entertaining people we've covered so far. Anyway, so Muriel was careful, Tammy Blee was beloved, but Biddy Early was all of that, and she smoked a pipe, drank poutine with the best of them, and buried four husbands, and once spat on a priest's horse hard enough to throw him mid-sermon. So if today's episode has more personality than usual, that's not me embellishing, that's just Biddy. So Biddy was born Bridget Connors, some records say O'Connor, in 1798 in the townland of Faha, which is in County Clare, right in the middle of the brutal aftermath of the United Irishmen's Rebellion. Rough year to be born in Ireland, apparently, and it didn't get gentler from there. By her mid-teens, both her parents were dead, and Biddy was evicted and sent into a workhouse, the euphemistically named House of Industry. She'd have grown up watching eviction as a constant looming threat, which explains a lot of basically who she became. She spent the rest of her life with zero patience for landlords, and we'll get to what that looked like in a minute. But before her mother died, though, she passed something down, a working knowledge of herbal medicine, what plants to gather, what they treated, when to pick them. That knowledge became the foundation or foundation Biddy built an entire reputation on. And here's a detail I personally love. Throughout her life, she went by her mother's surname, Early, not her father's, and not any of her four husbands. She believed her gift descended through the women in her family, so that's the name she carried. In a period where a woman's identity was legally and socially folded into whichever man she belonged to, Biddy just didn't give a shit, really. Psycat, hello, hello, thanks for the sweeties. Yes, good old lollipops there. Thank you. So now, the object, the blue bottle. Um, so every cunning figure we've come across so far has had some kind of signature tool. Muriel had his bottled storms, the Pellers had their hold stones, and Biddy's was a dark blue bottle that functioned as a crystal ball. She'd hold it up, look into it with one eye, and see what she needed to see. The cause of an illness, the location of something lost, what was coming. Zanka, hello, hello, thanks for joining. Um, so where does she get this bottle, this blue bottle? Now, this depends on who you asked, and honestly, because this is an oral tradition passed hand to hand for a century and a half, and it's got variants. The most popular version was that her son Tom died young, and the fairies challenged him to a hurling match in the afterlife. He beat them, not exactly known for their athleticism, apparently, and the bottle was his prize, which he sent back to his mother as a gift. Other versions cut out the hurling match entirely and just say that the fairies gave it to her directly, or that it came from one of her husbands after his death. What stays consistent across every version of the catch attached to it, she she was never to charge money for what the bottle showed her, only accept gifts like food, turf, poutine, which she loved, or she'd lose the power. And she was never to let anyone else look into it on pain of madness. But the story goes that a man once talked her into letting him peek in exchange for helping her move house, and he went mad. Moral of the story: don't ask wise women for favors. All right. So what did people actually come to Biddy for? Three big categories here, mostly human ailments, which were the everyday sicknesses nobody had a doctor nearby to treat. Then there was animal ailments, which mattered enormously because in a subsistence farming economy, a sick cow or horse wasn't an inconvenience. It was the difference between your family eating that winter or not. And third, this is the one that's very specifically Irish and very specifically hers, fairy trouble. If you'd built on a fairy path without knowing it, or disturbed a fairy fort, or just had the bad luck to catch their attention, you got sick or your luck turned. And Biddy was the person you called to negotiate on your behalf. She said the fairies gave her a rough time for it, sometimes a grueling, in her words, for constantly siding with the humans. Who's here? Underworld Dark Moon. Hello, thanks for joining. I haven't seen you here before. So, welcome. All right, we're talking about Biddy Early today, if and nobody caught that, but I'm just going to carry on anyway. So she also told fortunes, found lost objects, and identified who was responsible when something went wrong. Theft, illness, unexplained bad luck, and she reportedly didn't wait to be told any of this. People would arrive at her door, and she'd greet them by name, describe their ailment, and tell them why they'd come before they'd said a single word. Whether that's showmanship, genuine intuition, or just an excellent regional gossip network, I'll let you decide. But it's the kind of detail that built a legend very fast. Her fame reached high enough that Daniel O'Connell, the great liberator, the leading Irish political figure of the era, is said to have consulted her before the 1828 Clare election, wanting to know how he'd fare. She told him he'd win, he did, and that election result helped push through the Catholic Emancipation Act of 1829. And that detail is about to become the hinge the rest of the storyline sort of turns on. So Biddy did not do subtlety when it came to authority. There's a story about a landlord trying to evict her who she warned essentially, you'll be leaving before I do, both in and out. And he died shortly after in a house fire, found half in and half out of a window. There's a similar story about a different landlord, a Dr. Murphy, who evicted her from a rented house. He died in a fire in his own home not long after, too. Um, these are the kinds of stories that get attached retroactively to someone with a fearsome reputation, whether or not the sequence of events actually played out that tidily. But the fact that people were telling these stories about her while she was alive tells you plenty about how much power her community believed she had, and how unwise they thought it was to cross her. So the church is where things get genuinely serious, though. Do you remember that 1829 Catholic Emancipation Act I told you about just now? So before it, the Catholic Church in Ireland operated under real restrictions and didn't have much institutional muscle to throw around. After it, the church became a serious force, newly empowered and very invested in stamping out anything that looked like competition for the people's faith and obedience. A largely illiterate, devoutly religious peasantry going to an unlicensed, unordained woman for cures and answers instead of the parish priest, that reads as heresy to a newly powerful institution, and the clergy in Clare treated it exactly that way. Priests denounced her by name from the pulpit. They told parishioners that visiting her was a mortal sin, that even giving someone directions to her cottage could put their soul at risk. And Biddy, characteristically, was unbothered. When one priest showed up at her door to personally order her to stop, she reportedly spat on his horse. The horse bolted. The priest went with it mid-lecture, not by choice. She also, by more than one account, later cured a priest of cancer, free of charge. No hard feelings apparently held on either side, which tells you this wasn't a simple, clean war between good folk healer and an evil institution. It was messier and far more human than that on both sides of the pulpit. So all that tension came to a head in 1865 when Biddy was formally charged with witchcraft and brought before a court in Ennis. She was prosecuted, remarkably, under the Irish Witchcraft Act of 1586, a law nearly 300 years old at that point, dusted off one more time. She's generally reckoned to be the last person in Ireland ever tried under it. Here's how it ended. One by one, the witnesses who'd agreed to testify against her backed out. Nobody wanted to be the person on record putting Biddy Early away, not when half the parish had been quietly slipping in her back door and for cures for decades, priests included, apparently, when nobody was looking. Without testimony, the case collapsed, no conviction, she walked free, protected less by the law than by the sheer weight of a community that, whatever the clergy said from the pulpit on Sunday, was not about to give her up. Um, so Biddy married 4 times, outlived every one of them, and her last marriage happened when she was around 70. To a much younger man who came to her to be cured, and as the story goes, agreed to marry her in exchange. See, she said yes. That's not a woman who slowed down with age at all. She died in April 1874 in her small cottage in Kilbarron Lake, or by Kilbarron Lake, um, having asked a friend, Pat Lochnan, to make sure she got last rites and a proper burial, and he did. And in the version of the story everybody tells, the priest who administered her last rites took the famous blue bottle afterward and threw it into the lake, either to destroy its power for good, or depending on who's narrating, to claim it for himself. People dove for it for years afterwards. Apparently, nobody ever proved they'd found the right one, but 27 priests are said to have served at her funeral mass, and the parish priest reportedly called her, in the end, a saint who walked in our midst, which is a genuinely remarkable thing to say about a woman the church spent decades trying to run out of business. Um, see, W.B. Yeats called her the wisest of the wise women, and wrote her into his poetry. Lady Augusta Gregory was collecting stories about her from locals within 20 years of her death, while people who'd actually known her were still alive to tell them. All right. Oh, I need to extend these. I keep saying I'm going to go for 20 minutes, and it's always 15 minutes. I have to put some more in, I think, in the future. But anyway, so that's it for Biddy Early. Next time, next week, next Thursday, we're staying in that same kind of threshold territory, but shifting from a person to an actual practice. I'm trying to do this, talking about a person in history and then a practice itself in folk witchcraft. But we're going to do drawing down the moon. which ties in very nicely with the previous episode about moon water and what a future episode I'm going to do about scrying. We'll get into Robert Cochrane's claim to have literally drawn down the moon, Dorian Valiente's much more grounded water scrying version of the same rite, and why two people describing the same practice can sound like they're not even talking about the same universe. All right, so that's next week, Thursday, but don't miss all the other stuff. We've got Covenant on Sunday, as per usual, at 2 p.m. GMT. And then on Tuesday, we'll be doing the Brew and Babble news section. All right, I hope you're enjoying these. I am. I love these history bits. They're great. And I do love folk witchcraft, so I'm enjoying the practice as well. But yeah, other than that, that's it then. And if nobody's got any questions, then I will sign off. If you do have questions afterwards, as I said, just drop them in the comments to one of the videos, and if it's a question I can put some body into, I'll probably create a short in answer to it or something like that. All right. So thanks for watching. Thanks for joining.